podcast that he hosts, Gen X Grown Up. Go over there. It's much better than I made it sound. Hey, on today's show, we're going to honor the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi in the best way we know how.
To watch it?
Which is by discussing 5 of the most egregious changes George Lucas made to the film since its release in 1983 and questioning the morality of him doing so.
Morality.
Okay.
I think it's a moral question. I do think it's a moral question. To whom does art belong? Why don't you put that, Mona Lisa in the Louvre? I mean, to whom, You know what I'm saying. Anyway, before we do that, though, and actually like right now, we're just about to review current news stories related to 1980s media, including Michael J. Fox's thoughts on a Back to the Future reboot. Carrie Fisher got her star, and I kept this just so how you had it, Kat, because I know you're trying to help me. Peril for Prince's Prince.
Nice.
Thanks.
Time codes are in the show notes if you'd like to skip around.
Right.
Hey, let's get caught up on 1980s news.
Finally, some
At some point, this show's going to kick in a high gear. I know, because I'm going to forget that I myself am dragging it down.
Is it going to be when Kat is reading all the patrons at the end? Is that when you're going to finally?
I make no promises.
Crap, I better get
my
ready.
second win.
Okay.
You got at least 3 hours, Kat. You got plenty of time. Hey, first up in 1980s news per Variety, Michael J. Fox is not going back to the future. In a recent cover story on his life and career, Fox told Variety that if Hollywood ever opts to reboot Back to the Future without the original cast, Michael J. Fox says he's at peace with the decision, saying, quote, "I'm not fanatical. Do what you want. It's your movie. I got paid already." End quote. I think that's perfect attitude. I mean, except for the fact that, this should never be considered by anyone.
Right.
Certainly not.
Right.
Certainly not.
There is no need.
But it connects directly back to, did you do this on purpose? All of these stories, are they all connected? Who owns it, right? It's the same thing. Once it's released, Michael J. Fox doesn't own it. He's been paid to perform a certain thing. No more than, maybe a little more than, but no more than the gaffer, no more than craft services. They don't own it. They worked on the film performing a certain duty. It's not their right to say you should or shouldn't reboot it. Again, Kat, you shouldn't. It's clearly not the right idea. He could be much more adamant about the fact that they shouldn't, and he would be right. But I think it's a healthy attitude to have.
Well, in his defense, he does also say, quote, "I don't think it needs to be made." That is. So I think Bob and Bob have been really smart about that. I don't think it needs to be rebooted because are you going to clarify something? You're going to find a better way to tell the story? I doubt it.
Nope.
End quote.
No.
Nope.
Now,
I think
I
not.
don't think there's a better way.
however, Christopher Lloyd, who played Doc Brown to Fox's Marty McFly, is more open to firing up the DeLorean for another jump to the past or future, saying, quote, "I would love to do a sequel, but I think Bob Zemeckis and producer Steven Spielberg felt that they told the story in 3 episodes. But if somebody has a brilliant idea that would justify a 4th film, it might happen." End quote.
I love that he's in. It just speaks to how he probably enjoyed the process, like had fun making those movies and wouldn't mind doing it again.
I look at this almost exactly like I looked at Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
If you want to play in that world, don't erase the world and try to make it over.
Right.
There's a universe inside of Back to the Future where there's a certain kind of storytelling. There's a certain tongue-in-cheek nature. There are consequences, but you're working in like it's a padded cell, right? It's not doom and gloom kind of traveling in time. It's fun. It's fun-hearted, right?
Yeah.
You could tell more stories like that. You could absolutely have, Doc Brown's protege who he's taught all the mysteries of time travel and have other adventurers doing that. Just like the Ghostbusters film that rebooted should have been a continuation, not a reboot. Learn from that. I mean, I think I would watch that, but to start it over it's a fool's errand.
I hope they make that movie. Doc Brown's, what did you say? His
Doc
protege?
Brown's
His protege. Is that the name of it? Yeah.
I hope.
Doc Brown's protege.
Yeah, John, it's yes, this story I think is on point to what we're going to be talking about a little while because it does raise that question about to whom these types of things belong. And what comes to mind for me, similar to the George Lucas thing, is I think about the ire, that how angry and upset fans were of about the 2016 Ghostbusters. Suggesting that it, quote, ruined their childhood.
Right.
Should I say quote when I'm not really quoting anybody? But people said that. Trust me on that.
I'm sure many people did.
Sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk to, and I'm trying to find, and if you know somebody or have an idea, another maybe podcast host or someone, that could speak to this type of phenomenon in the pop culture fandom, how we feel we have ownership over these things. You know, I don't agree with that attitude that if you change something you have a subsequent film, it kind of could color my view about all the ones I had already. I mean, that's kind of silly. Those seem to be protected, walled off, you know.
Yeah.
But,
and, you know, we'll dig into this more later when we get to Jedi, I'm sure. But the key difference really between what someone might do, even the Ghostbusters reboot in 2016, the difference is the creator of Ghostbusters was not then actively trying to suppress and eliminate the original version of it, which Lucas did. When he did the new versions, he's like, well, you can't buy the old one anymore. It's gone. Good luck, you know? That was a revisionist history where the other is like, oh, I want a new interpretation. There's a definite difference between having a new one and having a new one while destroying the old one.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
If you want to go back to the future sooner than any possible reboot or sequel, Fox revisits the film and his television stardom and his advocacy for Parkinson's research, the disease that he was diagnosed with at age 29, and still, which we talked about before. It's a new documentary by Davis Guggenheim that premiered in Apple TV Plus, I don't know, a week or two ago. John's watched it. I know, Kat, you started watching it. Did you get through it?
I didn't get to finish yet, but I love it. I wish I could have carved out a little more time yet. It's awesome the way that they structured it. And everything I've seen so far, I love about it.
I'll come clean and say I'm actually stuck. I'm about maybe 10 or 15 minutes from the end. It just gets so heavy and so heart-wrenching that I'm like, I need a breath. I need to go watch the new Heart show or something. I needed a breather. I'll finish it. It's amazing, but it's real and it's hard.
What totally intrigued me was how they, like Kat's alluding to, how they stitched together these various moments in his life by hiring actors to reenact what they imagined would have been like the behind the scenes of different. I guess I'm saying the word moments again, but in the clip I saw, it explaining how hard it was for him to do both Back to the Future and Family Ties.
Yes.
Literally, back to back on single days for weeks. They actually have an actor pretending to be him, going from the set of the TV show to the film. Oh, that was so cool.
It's amazing.
Well, you know what else is amazing about that entire show is much like the documentaries that the Nacelle Company does, where they get amazing comments from amazing people and they interject them at amusing times. There's so much footage of Michael J. Fox. So when they're talking about that moment where he was working on the film and on the series at the same time, they'll cut to Michael Keaton and somebody talking to his character going, so how you liking the new job? And it's like, it's as if they had scripted it for that moment and they found it in all this archival, not even archival, just in public footage that's out there. It's an amazing job. Oh, yeah.
With regard to having folks reenact some of the things that he did on film, Fox referred to how he had to slide over the hood of the DeLorean and get into the car. He said, quote, now, when we made the movie, nobody taught me how to do a car slide. I just flipped into the seat and there I went. I never understood that was really difficult to do. These kids couldn't do the thing with the DeLorean to save their lives. I was tempted to just get up there and do it myself. Seems like he's still got a great sense of humor. In spite of the many challenges he's had for the last, almost 30 years now.
Oh my gosh.
Remarkable.
Yeah, even, not all the way through, but that shines through so much. It's so real. And he's just, this is how I am. This is it. This is me.
And while Back to the Future might not be on the screen anytime soon, it is being reimagined as a Broadway musical. And I'll be seeing that when it comes to New York this July.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, in other 1980s news, as reported by NPR, for May the 4th, Carrie Fisher got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Carrie Fisher brought a sparkle wherever she went, at least according to her daughter, Billie Lourd, who spoke at the May 4th ceremony unveiling Fisher's star. Fisher would even, they're talking about literally, because she literally would fling glitter at Star Wars fans that she met at conventions. So Lord herself sprinkled some glitter across her mother's star after the ceremony.
Oh, so cool.
Nice. Classy.
I'm not going to explain the origin of May 4th. May the 4th is because of the similarity of the May the Force be with you. Come on, people.
If any of our listeners don't know that.
Not like Star Trek Day. That's actually based on the premiere of the show.
Oh.
So.
I thought it was going to be some mathematical thing. Like you had to know.
No.
Not pi, but whatever.
Well, on the planet Vulcan, the date is actually transposed. No, it's nothing like that.
It was the landing coordinates.
Longitude.
Star Trek fans are so high on themselves. Ugh. Get down off of your high, whatever Star Trek beast would be equivalent to a horse.
Horse? Because we're based in reality?
Okay. Well, Leia's star isn't far from her twin brothers. The star from Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, is just a few feet away. And at the ceremony, Hamill described meeting Fisher ahead of filming Star Wars when he was 24 and she was just 19. Quote, every expectation I had was just obliterated. She was so charming, so funny, so adorable, so wise beyond her years, I just couldn't believe it. And brutally frank, end quote.
I wonder what expectations he had.
What he had was, because he talks about it a little bit before, is that he knew he was going to meet, they were just starting this film. Yeah. She invited him to dinner so they could get acquainted before they started shooting. He knew she was 19. Okay. And as he jokes, he says, and I was a worldly 24.
Oh.
He said, I knew she was a year out of high school.
Yeah.
So he was expecting someone who had the maturity level of someone who hadn't been at high school very long.
She asked him to sign her yearbook, stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Go to prom with me.
Go to the prom.
Of course, Fisher had other memorable film roles, including those throughout the 1980s when Harry Met Sally and the Blues Brothers, and was nominated for Emmys. But most folks, again, know her as Princess Leia. But her daughter initially wasn't a fan. Billie Lourd said that when Fisher first tried to introduce her to the saga, when she was just a child, her reactions were, quote, it's too loud, end quote. Oh, yeah. And too bulbous. And too spectral. Callbacks to episodes that don't really work, except for the three of us here. It was,
but we love it.
Yeah, we love it. The show is really fun.
I'm there for it.
We like it enough. I'm enjoying it enough for everyone else, so that's fine.
I was just gonna say the show's really for us, which is what the download numbers tell me.
Oh no!
Just kidding. But it was only when Lord reached middle school and awed classmates began asking her about her mom that she realized something was up. Later, she recalled attending fan conventions with Fisher and acknowledging that her mom was, in fact, cool. Well, people waited in lines for hours just to meet her. People had tattoos of her. People named their children after her.
That's so nice.
I know, it's got to be weird, right? Like it doesn't matter. It's still your mother.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what they do. It's still your father. I recall that story. What was it? Paul Rudd tells a story about how for years when he told his kids that he worked in movies, they thought he was an usher. Fisher, of course, sadly died in 2016, just a day before her own mother, actress Debbie Reynolds, passed away.
Yeah.
You got to think it's like that story of couples who often pass away within moments of one another. Yeah. Just from a broken heart, you think. While Lord said she was sad that her own children never got to meet their grandmother, she was thrilled that through Leia, she could still pass a piece of Fisher along to them.
Speaking of Leia, what did you call her? Like, I'm trying to remember when I was a kid, I think it was interchangeable to say Leah or Leia.
No, Leia.
Well, I know.
I got it right, Kat. So I said Leia.
But I have a memory of that being a thing, whether it was Leah or Leia when I was a kid.
Maybe only amongst those who hadn't seen the film yet.
Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it.
They say it many times.
Okay, and finally, in 1980s news, as reported by CNN, the Supreme Court has ruled against Andy Warhol in a copyright dispute over Prince portraits. So folks who listen to our show regularly will recall we actually talked about this some time ago when it, I want to say when at some point in the trial. I don't remember exactly what happened because these things do take some time. But ultimately what it came down to is that a photographer took some photos of Prince during the 1980s, and then Andy Warhol took those photos, did his Warholification of them.
Just one, I think, right? Maybe just one of them.
I think he had two series. There's like Purple Prince and Orange Prince. There's a bunch. There's actually a bunch of them.
Well, that he made, but weren't they all just based off of? I'm trying to remember.
Oh,
I think it was based off of one photo, and then he modified it.
Yeah.
From there.
There's one image of Prince, I think, that was used for all the pieces.
I think so.
Right. Yeah. But there's several pieces. I think there were like 19 or 20 pieces.
He did a bunch. Yeah, he made a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you think about everything we know about Copyright Cat, I mean, would it matter if he did 1 or he did 20? It does matter because each instance would be an additional infringement of the copyright.
Okay.
Anyway, so, folks on both sides of this were concerned how the court might rule because, on one hand, if it's found that Andy Warhol did in fact infringe copyright by taking a photograph from a photographer and modifying it, if that was found infringement, it might have a chilling effect on artists because, as we talked about before, copyright is intended to preserve the rights of the artist who created an original work and let them monetize that.
Yeah.
But we don't ever want it to be so restricted that there can't be derivations and evolutions of the same thing because, let's face it, everything comes from something else, right?
Yes.
That whole adage about good artists steal. I mean, it's, talking to luxury, about music, etc. It's inevitable and it's not necessarily intentional. Now, Warhol did intentionally take a photograph that belonged to a photographer and Warhol it, and then ultimately it was sold and, to a magazine used for a cover, an article, and that sort of thing. And that's what was at issue. Yeah. Anyway, the Supreme Court ultimately decided that, in fact, it was an infringement. The ruling in the court was 7-2.
Yeah.
With Justice Elena Kagan penning a stringing dissent and arguing that the opinion will stifle creativity of every sort. So even within the court itself, and including 2 of the liberal justices, they came down on different sides of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sotomayor, writing the majority, wrote, Goldsmith's original works, that's the photographer, like those of other photographers, are entitled to copyright protection, even against famous artists, end quote.
All so far, so good.
What it comes down to is what we've talked about many times on the show is fair use, and John probably sees this and hears this all the time. In the podcasting community, in the creator community, I'll say, folks are always claiming fair use or questioning, what is fair use? Can I do this because it's fair use?
So much of copyright is up to interpretation if you get challenged.
Yeah, yeah.
And the word that jumped out at me in this ruling and in this article is the argument that Warhol's art was not transformative or sufficiently transformative. That's a slippery slope. How transformative is transformative? What, is there a percentage, The argument was, the photographer's work, its job, its intent was to represent this person in print somewhere, okay? Here's an image of him so you can recognize him. It shows who he is. The argument is that Warhol's work that took that print and did more with it, created art out of it, that the art served the exact same purpose to represent that person in print. And I think that's the foundational flaw. You could argue legality, whatever, just from a creative person. If I transform it and make it something completely my own that serves an entirely different purpose, and the most notable one is how I use things the most, and that is for commentary, for critique, for criticism, for observation, for to represent that thing so you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Someone made a movie. If that movie's job is to entertain you with this movie and this story. If I show a clip from that movie, I'm not trying to replace the movie. I'm saying, here's the movie we're talking about. I'm talking about this actor when he trips over this rug, right? It's like I'm talking about that moment in that film, or I'm talking about the actor or something. And if you argue that just because I used it, it serves the exact same purpose, that is so dangerous.
I take your point, John, but I think... I don't know how I come down on this. I think I do agree with with the court in the sense that this was an infringement, and I do agree that it, they want to use transformative, or they talk about whether or not so there's usually a 4-pronged test with regard to copyright infringement. And one of them is commercial, whether something was used commercially. It doesn't mean that if you didn't do it commercially, you're not infringing. You could still infringe even though you don't try to sell what you copied. Yeah. But they focus on that, and also a question whether or not these two things serve substantially the same purpose. So that's what John's talking about. Some of these things you get away with a fair use argument if what you do is different enough. It's changed in some way, it's different enough. But these were serve the same purpose in the sense that I guess what they were in a magazine to promote prints. That's why the photos were taken. That's what Andy Warhol's image was licensed for recently, actually, even though these pictures were taken and the art was done in the 1980s, it was licensed recently. That's what caused the situation.
Right.
It looks just like the photo. It just looks like he did a thing on Photoshop where he put, image trace or whatever, an Illustrator or something.
Right. I'm not judging the art as being good art. I don't care for it. It's just the right. So let me run a hypothetical by you, Will. So before the show, we were talking, you're a composer. You create music.
Yep.
Okay. Ostensibly, you would like to be paid for this music in some way. So let's say you created music, you have it on an album. This is Will's music. Okay. If another creative wants to talk about your music and say, I heard this great new artist, every track sounds the same, you've got to hear this amazing stuff, and he plays it on his show, and he gets paid on the show. Like, this person gets money for the show. And it's detrimental to all of creativity to say that I can't even give an example of your art to talk about your art. You know, how do you talk about music? How do you dance about painting? I mean, it's a medium that requires itself to be represented. So you would want your music to be represented and talked about and reviewed and made aware of and that sort of thing. But if we're too strict, people will be afraid to promote you because all they can say is your name and go listen to it on your own. Does that change the shade of it at all for you?
No, because I think what you're talking about falls squarely in fair use, as you know, as you said earlier, that commentary, something for educational purposes, you know, doing a review, that's fair use. And by the way, if you're listening to the show for legal advice, you shouldn't. But just to be clear, fair use is a defense. Okay? Man. Fair use is something you assert after you've gotten sued or
accused. Yeah.
You don't do something and say it's fair use. You do something and hope it's legal, and when you get sued, you hope this fair use is a defense.
You try to stay on. You stay on the right side of fair use, so that someone can't question you because they know that it's clearly going to be ruled as fair use should they challenge it.
So it's the asking forgiveness instead of permission thing.
It is.
I'm saying you shouldn't even do that, but whatever. But to John, I think a more appropriate hypothetical would be if someone took my song, right? That's in full, whatever the hertz are that we can hear. It's like 48,000 hertz or so kilohertz. Okay. And they crunched it down to 8-bit and then they released it and sold it like that. That's what I think this is. They said, this is exactly what he did. He took a photo. He just made it worse in quality.
Oh, no.
Which people loved at the time because it's just, it's like a couple of different tones. I can't remember what you call that. And he sold it in the same way that the photographer was selling it. That's the problem.
But I don't think he was. I mean, a photographer is creating accurate representations of a person to represent that person. Whereas Warhol was using that representation to distort and make a commentary on pop culture and that sort of thing. In your example, Will, both your original song and the 8-bit version of your song are both intended to be sold and listened to on the radio in the same format. And it is the same kind of thing. So I get your defense there, but look, again, not a fan of Warhol. Don't care. I don't dislike him. I'm apathetic. I think soup can. Hooray. Good for you. The point is, I don't think he was encroaching upon this photographer. And it's a scary thing for anybody that works in media to think that this kind of, you come down on this side of it.
I'm sure his intent was for it to be different. That he believed he was transforming it. I'm very sure about that. So how important is intent?
It's important if you achieve it. Obviously, you can't say I intended. If he photocopied the picture and said, well, I intended to make a statement. Whoops. Well, too bad. You didn't.
It was a statement about copyright law.
Intent in some criminal cases is important. They call it mens rea.
Sure. Okay.
But look, I agree with you. Ultimately, this is kind of scary because like you're saying, John, the estate was arguing it was to make a statement about it. Just like commentary about it, which would be fair use. And the court was saying, we don't see that. If you're trying to do that, I don't really see what the commentary was. It's not clear. Sure. It's not clearly a different message. That's dangerous. I agree. You don't want judges making those kinds of calls. The good news is the court limited it to the particular licensing of this Andy Warhol work. So with regard to the infringement, they didn't say all of his artwork is illegal now because it was infringed the photo. They just said, the estate licensing one particular piece for a magazine, that was the violation. So it could be scary, may have wider ramifications. For now, it seems at least they tried to make it a little more laser focused.
That's good.
But we'll see what happens. It's definitely going in the opposite direction of how we'd like things to go in other areas, like we talked with luxury about, where It's hard for musicians to make music these days because they're afraid of something seeming derivative.
Right.
Or,
I mean, artists should be protected and compensated. I'm not making an argument against that.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Just saying that that if it is so protective that it stifles other types of creativity or promotion or criticism or whatnot, even though I could say clearly that's fair use because I did criticism. If courts are coming back saying you're wrong, well, then you're like, well, I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah.
And now you've put a damper. You've thrown a wet towel over the whole thing. Yeah.
I agree. Certainly, we don't want that. Yep.
Yeah.
This show here is basically a knockoff of Gen X Grown Up, and eventually, but it's a commentary on it. It's a commentary on it.
I'd been meaning to
File a lawsuit.
Yeah, I have a summons for you here, Will.
Yes.
Are you Will? I have this for you.
You're actually a process server. This is a long game.
It's really. I
Con
got
or
there
something.
finally. You had to bring it up. I couldn't. That was the catch.
All right. Yeah, we'll be back in a moment to see whether or not I'm serving time. That was a 1980s news. We'll do a true crime podcast about our podcast.
Oh, that's so meta.
It's like May 2023. I admitted to John I had been stealing his show.
He seemed nonplussed by the fact that Gen X Grown Up had just done an episode about Return of the Jedi not 2 weeks prior.
Right. But this is a commentary on your episode.
Will listened to the episode, made copious notes, and proceeded.
Oh my gosh. That episode drove me crazy. I think I wrote you that, right?
I even made notes.
Mostly it was stuff George said.
Oh, we've taken all the notes. Yeah.
Ugh.
I just didn't
I was
send my
immune.
notes in yet.
I claim I didn't know shit about it, so I could just say, which one of you dumbasses said this wrong thing?
When he was like, that, and they had that weird looking alien co-pilot flying with Lando. I was like, dude, man. And that one fish guy who says something about, we're trapped.
No.
I mean, it was like that bad, Cat. It was like that bad.
I listened. I made notes too. I don't have them next to me, or I would share them.
He called
They're in
him
the kitchen.
Han Solo. Han Solo. I told John I couldn't write all the things down because it'd be too much.
I'm saving all the Jedi I want to do a fourth listener feedback special about it.
Ooh, all right. Could be fun.
So if you want to talk about the history and the behind the scenes of making, or rather learn about the history, the making of the film, listen to Gen X Grown Up. They did do it because it is the 40th anniversary just a few weeks ago. We're not doing that. We're doing something a little bit different. We're going to focus on the changes with at least 2/3 of this show really knowing a lot about Star Wars. And one of us being, the Andy Warhol of sci-fi.
This sounds very transformative, Will. I think it'll stand up in court. Well done.
Now that I think about this, though, John, since Star Trek predates Star Wars, in this analogy, Star Wars would be the Andy Warhol.
Right, yeah.
Who took Star Trek and just made it weird. And maybe shitty. Is Star Wars the shittier Star Trek? No, it's definitely the less cerebral. We can agree about that.
Yes.
All right. Hey, so what we are going to talk about, however, like I mentioned, is we're going to talk about the changes done to Return of the Jedi, specifically since it was first released in 1983. And along the way, and maybe more interest to me, but we'll do both at the same time, is questioning the fact, like, how did we get here? And just thinking about the Andy Warhol bit or talking about Back to the Future, these other remakes, what business is it of anybody, including the director, to change something once it's out there in the ethos? Ethos? Is that the right word?
Maybe it could be the ether, but ethos is fine.
Ether. Yeah.
Ether. Well, ethos is what we're talking about, the morality, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I can,
Let's play on words.
Portmanteau.
It was a mush.
You mushed them up.
All right. Anyway, so look. So this month ago, as I mentioned, 40 years ago, the finale, what we thought would be the finale of the then Star Wars trilogy, was released on May 25th, 1983. Finally, we were treated to Return of the Jedi. I remember seeing a spread in Time magazine before the film came out that had like Lucas. It's a pretty classic picture. I don't think I'm imagining this. That picture where he's like posing in front of all these different models and props. You've got the half-built Death Star 2 is there. You've got that creature that eats the other creature outside the Jabba's palace. The rank is like there's a pup.
Yes.
Not the rancor. There's like
outside
little
outside the
thing that
palace.
eats like it eats like a frog or something.
Yes.
That's sitting near him, and all these tons of models.
Yep.
Anyway, and it teased a little bit about the story. I couldn't wait. That's what we did, That's how we got our information. Then it got unlike today, But look, whether you like the Ewoks or would have preferred a Planet of Wookiees, like me, Or you thought this third, film in the then trilogy was somewhat of a rehash of the original. I mean, another Death Star run. They got to get a shield down before they can get to the Death Star. Another lightsaber battle between, Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
What we believed was the final film was satisfying. That arc for those three films,
It's my favorite, actually. I love Return of the Jedi. My favorite of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it because you love Ewoks? Is that why?
Well, they don't hurt.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think part of it has to do with the characters are so much more fully developed by that point. And I love the interplay and the dynamics between them. Yeah. It just, it's so satisfying. It's just a really satisfying movie.
For many people, it's their favorite.
Yeah.
For me, it's my least favorite.
Why is that?
Of the three?
Yeah.
Or of all Star Wars films?
No, not
that
of all.
Can't be true.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
There's at least three that are worse than that. But I think it's because, Lucas, by his own admission, was trying to focus on the fact that these were intended to be films for kids. And so as they went along, instead of like the Harry Potter films, which got darker and grew with its audience, this was being created for an audience that was younger than the people who first saw the film in 1977.
Got to sell him toys.
Yeah. John, what's your favorite Star Wars film of those three?
Probably the original. Probably A New Hope is my favorite. I know most people come down to the side of Empire or you're wrong.
Yeah.
I enjoy A New Hope just because it broke so much ground. And it's like you're watching it. And I think I said this when I talked about Jedi over on our show. Star Wars is the same way. When I watch it now, I think about, oh crap, that's the first moment anybody ever knew what an X-Wing was. Oh crap, that's the first moment everybody, there are watershed moments of the universe that before this moment in this film, nobody knew what the hell a C-3PO was. And now he's beloved universally. And so seeing the origins of those things and just introduced nonchalantly, like, and a couple of robots, but enough about that. It's not, they don't shine a spotlight on it. And I love how the world felt so fully fleshed out and you got to see all this stuff for the first time. That's a long answer to a simple question, A New Hope.
I'm going to cut it all out, so it's fine.
That's fine. Yeah, cut it all out.
Yeah.
I'm guessing out of those three, The Empire Strikes Back.
I think so, yeah. It was written by Lawrence Kasdan, so it feels a lot tighter.
Okay.
I love the opening Hoth stuff. I do admit it gets kind of slow, I think, when we're going back between Dagobah and, whatever. This show's about Return of the Jedi. Yes, I think you're right, Kat. It's not a slam on you, Kat. It's a slam on me managing this train.
No, I just think it's cool. We each have a different favorite.
We each have one.
The three it's very balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, look, even though the third film, again, it seemed like it reached a satisfying conclusion, there were reasons to believe there could be others. In the very least, the movies made clear that they did not tell the beginning of the tale. So we could easily get stories set after the Offense of Jedi based on, but just as easily as we could get, episodes 1, 2, and 3, we could easily get ones after because there was always that rumor floating around that Lucas had fleshed out stories for all 9.
Right. Okay.
I think in Nacell's documentary, we learned that's not true. He had like some really high level things.
And that's in a land of no internet. I heard that exact same rumor 1,500 miles away from you. I heard he's got all 9 movies fleshed out. Everybody was talking about it. So it must be true. And you'd go meet your cousin in the summer who lives in Utah. And he's like, I heard there was 9 movies. I heard the same thing. That's amazing. It must be right. But yeah, we learned not the case.
Not 10, not 11, not 12.
No. Three trilogies.
I didn't have enough Star Wars geeks around me to know that. I don't remember being aware of the other stories.
The bigger plan.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, and you guys know this, and as a bit of foreshadowing though, you'll recall that when the first Star Wars film that John is his favorite was released in 1977, it didn't include the words Episode 4 or A New Hope in the opening.
Nope.
In fact, Lucas was confident that was going to be his first and only Star Wars film. There's no reason for him to suspect it would be as successful as it was. It wasn't until 1981, in anticipation of the premiere of Empire Strikes Back, that they added that to the Star Wars film and then re-released it.
That's a bit of humility that the makers of Leonard Part 6 could have learned.
Was that what the 6 refers to?
No. Wasn't it a Bill Cosby movie or something called Leonard Part 6?
Yes.
Oh.
Where's the first 5? Where's the next one? And it was a horrible flop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, in spite of us, thinking that he had 9 potential films in him, but by the 1990s, we'd essentially given up hope that there would be another Star Wars film. Until 1993, when Lucas announced he would begin work on 3 prequel films. And I was like, why? Like, what is that?
Yeah. The first question, what's a prequel? I don't get it. So you had to that was a new term. I hadn't heard that before.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. You're well, You know why?
I hadn't heard it.
First
No.
prequels?
I had heard it. You know
Okay.
why I had heard it? Because Temple of Doom is a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
That's when I first recall learning what that was.
Huh.
I don't know if I ever knew that until you just said it, but that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I knew that either.
It doesn't beat that drum, though. It's just another
Yeah.
Indiana Jones movie, whereas...
It just happens to be the year at the beginning of the
Yeah.
film when they set it up is
Okay.
2 years earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
But that's what, but to your point, it wasn't really in our lexicon.
Yep.
So by the time 1997 rolls around, we're so excited when trailers promoting the return of the original trilogy to theaters start popping up on our television.
Yeah.
Play you this commercial here.
Okay.
For an entire generation, people have experienced Star Wars the only way it's been possible, on the TV screen. But if you've only seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all. Now, for its 20th anniversary, the adventure of a lifetime returns to the big screen in a way you've never seen before.
There'll be no one to stop us this time.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
With newly enhanced visual effects,
They're coming in too fast!
THX and digital sound, and a few new surprises.
Nabuki.
You know what part that is?
Yes.
Anyway, even though these commercials promised the films would have newly enhanced visual effects, THX and digital sound, and a few surprises, little did we know that those, quote, few surprises would have a monumental impact on the storytelling of the movies and on the fans.
It's staggering that promo itself is like 30 years old. And it's talking about the 20-year anniversary of Star Wars. I'm like, how damn old am I?
What?
That's ridiculous.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I give you some math here. 97, 2007, 2017. Holy cow, John, you're right.
Just stop.
It's almost, well, it's at least what? It's 36 years old.
Kat, I knew Will would check my math.
2007, 2017. Oh, wait, no. 2007, 2017.
It was an
it
estimate.
anyway.
26 years old.
What I was
26
doing,
years old.
it was a transformative interpretation of the time between
Okay,
things.
There you go. Right, so, right.
Fair
Yes.
use.
I wish I had instead pulled clips of George.
Just saying things.
Anyway, look, to keep this moving along and to entertain, I guess to make this interesting in a couple different levels, I feel like, we've done this kind of thing before. Let's talk about the story of Lucas, why he changed this and how he came to change it, while we talk about go back and forth between some of the actual changes that he made. So first up, there's been many tweaks to all of the films throughout the several decades. I have a list. It's long.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
But to Jedi specifically, there's been many minor tweaks through the 97 special edition, the 2004 trilogy DVD, and the 2011 Blu-ray, including the fact that Cat's precious Ewoks now blink. They added them gave them the ability to blink. But anyway, that said, we're going to talk about the 5 most significant changes that Lucas made. Okay, here's the first one. Inside Jabba's palace.
All right.
The first one that drives me crazy is, look, in the original film in 1983, the Max Rebo Band performed a song that they call Lop-T Neck. I don't know what that means. You don't need to know what it is. But you've heard it, you know what it is, and you've got the dancer Ula performing there while the music's playing to please Jabba. And ultimately, the Jabba sends her, tosses her, or opens a trapdoor below her and sends her to the Rancor because she, I don't know. She's not willing to do something that he wants her to do. I don't speak Huttese, but I know he's disgusting. And to bring this band to life, it's puppets. And I remember watching a behind the scenes thing when I was a kid, showing how the person puppeteering Cy Snoodles, who was the lead singer, had things attached to their limbs below the stage.
It was like a big stick puppet.
Legs.
Right. It was straight out of the Muppet Show. Yeah. Like a full body
amazing.
puppet, but remote. Yeah.
When they would lift their arms under the stage, Cy Snoodles would in the leg. You saw that too, Kat, right?
Oh, yes.
Is that right?
Yep. I love that.
So
Love that.
in the 97 special edition, it's mind-blowing that Lucas thinks among the many things he needed to change, and we'll talk about why he made these changes or why he said he made these changes. They changed the song entirely from this one that we're familiar with now to something that it's called Jedi Rocks. Isn't that your first warning? Even if that's just the blue harvest of references. So inside it's known as that. That's already should be a red flag.
Yes.
It's now louder. It's jazzier. I mean, straight up, we're talking about, Americana, like an early American jazz number.
Yeah.
Or, mid, I don't know, or 19th century, 20th century jazz number, I guess. Mid 20th century jazz. It's so like world breaking to me. The style of the music. Like I can't, getting past that already is difficult.
Yes.
But they've now replaced the puppets with these creepy CGI aliens.
That was a bigger no-no for me. That one.
Yeah.
Taking away the puppets.
There's a charm to the filmmaking that was done in the era that you had these puppets, that you have the Henson Company advising you. Frank Oz was involved, right? And now, again, it's like, why are you erasing the puppets and replacing them or over masking them with CGI, which honestly was not ready to do a full screen, entirely digital character at that point. It was so video gamey.
Good point. Anyway, yeah.
Lucas was overconfident at this point because ILM had just done Jurassic Park in 1993.
Yeah.
And he saw the results. He tells a story that when he sees the results, because he created ILM, so and that's his strong suit. Technology, advancing technology for film is definitely his wheelhouse. He saw the results ILM created to make these dinosaurs look lifelike, and he said he started to weep. Like he felt that he had seen a leap in the progress of filmmaking, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But to what like John's saying, doing a dinosaur and doing something that's talking and emoting and has eyes and a mouth, a humanoid type figure.
Yeah.
No, far off. Anyway, also inside the palace, there's a couple of extra scenes that show Boba Fett flirting with some of the young alien women there, which original Boba Fett actor Jeremy Bulloch said were contrary to how Boba Fett would behave. And I think so too.
Very contrary. Yeah, that makes no sense.
Anyway, so going back to this, why did Lucas change things in the first place? Well, speaking with Entertainment Tonight in 2022, he said, quote, "My original motivation is going back into the films and working on them is that films, unlike books or symphonies, are never finished." Let's just pause for a second.
What?
I guarantee, folks, if you Google the words unfinished and symphony, a whole lot of fucking symphonies are going to come up. So already this is a terrible metaphor.
Yeah, right. Aside from being wrong, it's also inaccurate, right?
Then he says, so films he's talking about are abandoned or yanked away from you. At some point, somebody says, that's enough. We're putting it in theaters.
Bullshit. When you are a filmmaker, you are given a budget and a schedule. If it's yanked away from you, it's because you went beyond that, most likely, right? Unless something changed, right? But I'm saying, I understand that an auteur was like, my baby was torn from my arms, not yet fully formed. Yes, and you're 3 weeks over schedule and $2 million of a budget. That's why. Right. Do your job.
And building on this series of terrible metaphors, George continues saying, it's the same thing with fine art. A lot of times, if you go into an artist's studio, you're going to find a lot of canvases sitting along the wall. They say, oh yeah, I did that 12 years ago. And you look at it and say, it's perfectly fine. But they say, there's something I don't feel right about it. I'll get it. Well, film is very much like that.
No, but you don't go find who bought your finished art and go, excuse me, I need to change the color of these trees because I know you'll like it and you think it's done and it belongs to you now and I've relinquished control. But I'm gonna show up every 6 or 8 years and I'm gonna insert some new brush strokes in your painting because it's still mine. No,
he's gonna show up. Oh no!
Did Mona Lisa always have a mustache?
She was always intended to have. The technology at the time prevented me from painting it.
Right,
that's a good point.
Now, if you remember earlier this year, Steven Spielberg reflected on the CG changes he made to his 1982 film E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Right.
And speaking at Times 100 Summit, Spielberg said, quote, that was a mistake. No film should be revised based on the lenses we now are either voluntarily or being forced to peer through, end quote.
And to his credit, he reversed that mistake.
Oh, yeah.
And John alludes to another excuse that Lucas made, is that he said, and I didn't write the quote down, but I remember it was more, I can paraphrase. He said he believed at the time he made A New Hope, it was 60%, in all these films, they were 60% done. And he wanted to get them 80% of the way there, but he just couldn't at the time.
Yeah. No, you just need to let go. When you're producing something and then when it's time. And you need to let it go. And it goes out to the world. And
all of these examples, the example he gives at the studio, if we were to really make this more fitting metaphor, it's as if he made a Star Wars film and he had the VHS tape sitting on a table. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
Keep it.
Right.
Yeah.
But like John's saying, once you put it in theaters, it's different, Jack.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be akin to going, okay, thank you, Howard Scott Warshaw. Great job writing Yar's Revenge. However, at the time, I really wanted online play and the internet wasn't a thing. But now I'm going to go back and retcon it and add it in. If you want to make a sequel or continue, again, that's fine. But not what Lucas did, which is like, well, I'm going to add online play and destroy the version that didn't have it.
Yeah.
Yes, right. We'll come to your house and crush your cartridge. Yes. All right. So here's another change he made that drives me crazy in Jedi. Yeah. The Sarlacc pit.
Yep.
I think this is a common thing with Lucas, that he, unlike his his contemporary, his friend Spielberg, who, we talk about a lot of other films in terms of Jaws, right? Setting the appropriate tension by not revealing the shark too soon or too often. Now, Spielberg was forced to do it because the shark looked like garbage. He was concerned it looked too fake.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, it looked real to me. It still looks pretty good to me.
Yeah.
But as a result, it couldn't do all the things they wanted. They included it less. John, you disagree?
I do disagree. Before you said the shark looks pretty good to you, I was just thinking, if anyone would be justified in going back to fix some effects, it's Spielberg on his first major motion picture. His first blockbuster motion picture, not his first film, but because that shark was garbage and it was the bane of his existence and it never worked and it was falling apart and you can see the creases in the foam. I mean, it's horrible, but he doesn't. And you know what? It's a product of its time. And the fact that he doesn't means when I watch it, now I enjoy it because I can look back and go, that didn't bother me at the time. At the time, it was a scary ass shark, and I was pissing myself when he came up out of the water because Roy Scheider's like, you come down here and shovel some of this. Roar! The shark comes out. It didn't bother me at all that it was a foam shark. And to change that would change, which I probably is the thrust of this entire episode. It changes the memory that you feel that you have some license to, you have some ownership of.
Yeah.
And to change that shark would make it look better, but it would no longer be right.
And it wouldn't it wouldn't be that movie.
It wouldn't be that movie.
That experience. Make a new add-on. And people will buy it. Like, hey, I improved it.
Right. Turn on Super Shark mode on the DVD or something, right? But let me have the real one still, right?
It's a different track. Well, the point I was going to make by bringing up Jaws, and certainly you make a different point, good point, John, is that the whole tension is built because we see the fin only.
The barrels.
For so much of it.
Not even part of him. What he's dragging, the barrels are a big part of it. It implies his strength. He brought the barrels under. No one's ever took 3 under. Well, now it's a dangerous shark and it's stronger than ever, right? Without seeing him be strong. Yeah.
Yeah, the unknown, the stuff we leave to our imagination is scarier.
If you think about the original films, right? The first one Lucas directed, but Marshall Lucas bailed him out, really. The second film he didn't direct. The third film, Return of the Jedi, he did not direct. He didn't even write them. He had a hand in the story, obviously, but other folks wound up writing them for him.
Yeah.
Now he has the power, the money, and the authority to be able to do what he wants. He goes back and does things. He undoes creative decisions that made those films stronger, including, unlike Spielberg, I'm suggesting, he shows us more. So in Empire Strikes Back, we see the Wampa a whole lot now.
Yeah.
It was scary when it was just an arm and feet.
It was already scary.
He added Jabba to A New Hope. When hearing just that this was a bad ass guy waiting to kill Han Solo, that was scary for 2 films until we finally saw him.
And that add-on was ridiculous.
And if anybody wondered, should I do this? Right? There's the whole thing. Oh, can you do it versus should I do it?
Right.
Yeah.
If the Jabba you're going to see in Jedi does not look the same as the super high-tech digital Jabba, then you should not do it, which is only going to open a stupid Lucas rabbit hole of like, oh, well, fine, I'll replace him in Jedi too. No, don't do that.
Yes.
Don't do that. It's an amazing 4-man puppet. Don't do that. No. Don't take Salacious Crumb who's sitting there by Jabba and make him a digital something instead of a Muppet to cover him up. That's what he was in the first place. Leave it alone.
And I love Salacious Crumb. He's one of my favorites. He has to be a
They
puppet.
did that in the prequels. Remember, we had the puppet Yoda in the first film, and by the time the film came out in DVD, he replaced that puppet with a
garbage. And I remember seeing special features of Lucas just absolutely obsessing over how accurate is the digital Yoda, how accurate is it, change this, and it didn't matter. It still didn't have the reality or the charm of the living entity there on set for the actors to talk to, being in the shadow, having the eye line. It was lost.
And also, can I just say Jabba, like if I'm remembering correctly, isn't Jabba in that add-on, the digital, whatever, he's like the same size as Han Solo, basically. He's not.
Yeah, I heard Lucas talking about, well, it was years earlier, so he had, he weighed less.
Oh, he had grown.
He became more slovenly and larger by Jedi, So anyway, this is a long way of saying that they added more to the Sarlacc pit. Originally, it was just looked like a bottomless pit with teeth and tentacles. You couldn't really be sure what the creature below the dirt was. You just saw this gaping maw that was swallowing up, Jabba's henchmen left and right as when the guys were fighting it to free Luke and Han. But no, instead he added this, which essentially looks like a beak and more tentacles and sounds that have it vocalizing now and showing too much of the shark, showing too much of the wampa, or adding Jabba. To me, it's not so scary anymore. It almost looks like a digital hand puppet coming out of the hole.
It was unnecessary.
And speaking of unnecessary, and here's another theme of Lucas that runs through Lucas Changes. He doesn't trust his audience to be smart enough to understand things. One of the changes in 97, in this 97 special edition, in this same scene, if you'll recall, when Han is about to rescue Lando, who's fallen over,
I love that part.
Han can't see.
Right.
So when he's aiming his gun at a tentacle of the Sarlacc who's dragging Lando in, Lando's like, no, don't, I'm good, because he's afraid he's going to get shot. In the original film, Han says, "It's all right, trust me." In 97, they redubbed it to have him say, "It's all right, I can see a lot better." It was definitely funnier and more interesting when we didn't know if he was going to shoot Lando.
Yeah.
And it was more Han Solo for him to just say, trust me.
Yes. Anyway, look, to be sure, just to be fair, there's been other films with theatrical and director's cuts. Blade Runner comes to mind. There was more than 3 versions released, including the final cut, which is the only one that over which director Ridley Scott had complete control. So what's the difference between this and Star Wars?
Well, because the old versions are still around. For me, that's why I'm not as upset.
Right. Is it distinctions are being made on the Blade Runner films? It's like, well, there's this version and there's this version. And that, no,
I think John's right.
Okay.
Because, he's ultimately Lucas has eradicated the original.
Yeah.
Here's another interesting thing to think about, as he's again, removed the original films from existence. It's the original films that won Academy Awards, including Marshall Lucas's Academy Award for Best Editing.
Yeah.
They took home Academy Awards in categories like art direction, costume design, editing, score, sound, visual effects.
Yep.
The special edition touched upon every part of those.
I think if you change it, you have to give up your awards.
Yeah.
I think that's it. It's a new piece of work now. Sorry.
Do you think he was trying to go for more? And that failed miserably.
Have you noticed how you can't edit your tweets? It's like once you put it out in the world, that's what it is. And because then people comment and engage in it. And if you change it, the all bets should be off. You should lose your accolades that you got in the first one. That would have slowed him down.
I found this website that writes, with regard to that, writes, quote, "It was like Lucas was marking his territory by urinating on every part of the film to prove singular ownership over and above those who had collaborated with him on it originally." So, which raises the question for me, in part, because of all the praise his wife got, his now ex-wife, Marshall Lucas, got for saving the first film.
Understood.
Did he do it just to be able to distance himself or, put his own imprimatur on it so that he could now reap more of the credit?
Did it always bother him?
I imagine it did.
Yeah.
If you remember, we learned in that documentary that by Nacelle, it seemed like she was very heartbroken by it, but he was too.
Yeah.
By their split, I should say. I'm not alone in this crazy, it's this crazy conspiracy theory. There's Marshall Lucas theories abound the internet. Some suggest that he changed the film because in their divorce decree or by contract, he owed her only money for the original films, and if he changed them enough, Talk about a derivative work, substantial transformation.
Right.
That logic doesn't hold true for all films, though, because then you have Jedi that she wasn't involved in. Now, he could have been doing that for another nefarious reason, again, to get rid of other collaborators, as you said, and modify, Phil Tippett did a good job, but now it's a computer program, Now, if they had a tumultuous divorce and they were at each other's throats and they were involved, but the understanding that I have, especially from the nacelle doc that you talk about, is like they didn't even see each other. They were not in each other's lives any longer. And so would you still expend energy and tons of money and effort to try to whitewash away something you think that she had a hand in?
Remember, he thought she was cheating on him, right?
Really?
With somebody, but she denied. Anyway.
Put it behind you. Put it behind you, George.
I don't think he ever will. Here's another change George Lucas made to Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Vader speaks. So, though it's not the most significant of additions to the special edition, it's still pretty awful.
It's unnecessary.
If you remember when Palpatine's torturing Luke with the Force lightning, Vader makes the ultimate sacrifice by throwing the Emperor down a reactor shaft. And we think at the time he killed Palpatine. Spoiler alert. Palpatine is back somehow. I think that's a quote from one of the recent films. Seriously, that's one of the quotes.
Surprise.
Anyway, and as a result, he also mortally wounds himself. Well, the scene originally played out with Vader performing the act in silence. Yeah. You just saw the lightning, remember, reflected in his mask, and you saw him looking at Palpatine, looking at Luke, looking at Palpatine.
And you could project upon him the emotion that he must be feeling, seeing what this man is doing to his son.
That was powerful. The nonverbal can be so powerful.
You can't see his eyes. You can't see his face. It's all in posture and editing and timing and mapping your own emotions onto what these people might feel.
And it wasn't a podcast. It's a movie. We don't need to hear him talking.
Oh, right. Ad nauseum, just to hear himself talk. Yeah. So now at this pivotal moment, instead of standing by, and as John says, us being able to, imbue this moment, this emotional moment with whatever we believe he might be experiencing, instead, Vader now says no twice. The last time, or the second time he says it is, no! Which doesn't even sound like anything Vader would say.
No.
Except for the fact that it seems like the reason he added this is because it's a callback to the time Vader said no at the end of the first trilogy, the prequel trilogy.
Right.
Which is also terrible. When he finds out, after he first becomes Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, played by Hayden Christensen at that time.
Yes.
When he finds out that Padme is dead, he says it well. It sounds like they may have even just taken that same.
Maybe the same,
same sample.
No! And his arms are
it could only have been worse if when he grabbed Palpatine says, I told you twice.
I told you twice. I thought you were going to say it could only be worse if instead he was like...
That would have been better.
It would have been better.
So, in response to all these changes, beginning with the special edition, fans have been clamoring for the originals.
Yeah.
And not just to have them available on the VHS tapes that they have already, or the laser discs or CED discs. No. All these technological advances had been made over the last, 20 years by the special editions come out. And we've witnessed many of them applied to the new Star Wars films.
Yeah.
We knew they could use technology to clean stuff up. We know he invented it. So what we were clamoring for at the time is do all those good things to the original films.
Yeah.
Get rid of those rotoscope lines.
Yeah, take out the matte lines.
Other
and all
artifacts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And look, I would have had no problem with, and frankly, I am not religiously opposed to the special editions and stuff because I just don't feel that strongly about Star Wars. I enjoy it. I didn't like the changes, but from an artistic standpoint, I thought it was wrong.
Right.
But if what you were doing was what you said, Will, clean up problems. Don't replace elements or change whole songs or add characters or, change dialogue. That's ridiculous. It'd be one thing if you replace dialogue with a cleaner version of the appropriate same dialogue from that time period. Okay. But just like changing what someone says, like you said with Han at the Sarlacc pit, what,
right.
You change the complexion of the scene.
No.
Just clean it.
And you remind me, that change with the dialogue or adding the no, those weren't things that were not available to him 20 years earlier.
That's a great point. Yeah, if you're saying I'm changing this because I couldn't have edited in the word no back in 1970.
Yeah. Or
I think you could have.
James Earl Jones said it,
I think you could have.
So Because again, we saw these clean versions of these films coming out, but with alterations. We wanted clean versions of the originals. Thousands of fans petitioned Lucas to release what we saw as kids, but cleaned up, digital, etc., but to no avail. Instead, Lucas seemed to just flaunt his power over the films. And in 2019, one person with enough clout to get the original cuts of the films released tried and also failed. J.J. Abrams, who at the time was the director of The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, went on record with Now This News to reveal that he asked about getting the original cuts released. Although it wasn't clear with whom he spoke, the response was pretty non-negotiable. He said, quote, "I've been told that for reasons that I quite don't understand, that it's not necessarily possible," end quote. The only thing I could think of is that if you've seen the documentary, The People versus George Lucas, at the time Lucasfilm was offering a bunch of absurd responses as to why they couldn't provide what the fans were demanding, including that the original negatives were irreparably changed in the process of creating the special edition.
It's not how negatives work.
Yes, exactly. Which is easily debunked. In the very least, they had to digitize those negatives to then go alter them. So just give us that track, George, in Pro Tools or wherever you're doing it in. Regarding the likelihood of releasing original versions of the films, Lucas told American Cinematographer magazine in 1997 that, quote, "What ends up being important in my mind, because that's the only mind that matters, is what the DVD version is going to look like, because that's what everybody is going to remember. The other versions will disappear." So already he was hinting at his nefarious plot.
Right. Because, DVDs are the last format that will ever be released on. Wait, yes. I meant Blu-ray. Wait, I meant streaming. Wait, I meant whatever's next.
And in 2004, when a new DVD special edition came out, Lucas told the Associated Press he had little sympathy for fans who yearned for the 1977 original, saying, quote, "It's like this is the movie I wanted it to be. And I'm sorry if you saw a half-completed film and fell in love with it, but I want it to be the way I want it to be."
Oh my gosh.
Wah.
No.
Oh my gosh.
I think Lucas would love if he were doing streaming productions today. I think of like the Game of Thrones coffee cup, where it's streaming and I can go back and do a quick edit and fix it before anybody else sees it. And the old one is totally evaporated. He would love that kind of control freak shit. I'd never heard that particular quote. I knew he was adamant about not putting it out, but I didn't know it was, I thought it was more about him, but I mean, it is, I guess.
It is, yeah.
To actually dismiss, sorry if what you saw you loved, that's not what I wanted you to see. But to what we saw, you can't change the fact that it is what we saw. It is what you produced. It is what we bought a ticket to.
Leave it alone.
Yes. That's what I want to see again. And if you take it away...
And fans aren't the only ones who want Lucas to release the original. Curators at the National Film Registry picked the 1977 version of Star Wars to preserve it for history's sake. But they still don't have a copy in the registry. When they asked for a copy, Lucas refused, saying that he would no longer authorize the release of the original.
Oh my gosh.
I love the efforts that are done by all these teams that are working on those despecialized editions or worked on. They're out
Harmony,
now. Yeah, exactly. And they did little mini documentaries themselves of what a pain in the ass it was because they took an ancient VHS to know what the actual content's supposed to be, and then extracted individual frames and pieces from all these different releases to get, in that release, there's the right shot of this, and I'll just color correct it to match the original shading because the rest of that's the closest we'll ever get right now. And even that, it's to the copyright infringement issue we had earlier with Warhol. They could be sued out of their socks if someone wanted to, because they are releasing a film that the creator does not want to have out there any longer. And that is serving the exact same purpose as the current film.
Yeah, I think you could only get it through like Pirate Bay and stuff like that now. I believe his site is down.
I'm sure I have no idea where you could find it.
Yes, no. And making it even more difficult for Harmy, I told you I have this list, is Lucas was tweaking it since 1977.
Wow.
In fact, films would be released and then he would tweak it and they would release a different version, wider. I mean, this is something he's been doing.
He's got issues.
Anyway, here's the last couple of changes to Jedi that drive me crazy. So, and these are both at the end of the film. Hayden's a Force ghost now. It's got to be the most infamous change. Is the digital insertion of actor Hayden Christensen, who played Anakin,
right?
Who turned from the good side to the dark side, former Jedi. When we first see Luke take off Vader's mask, it's a it's a different actor. It's Sebastian Shaw.
Yes, yeah.
Which is actually funny because one of the changes they actually did make was Sebastian Shaw in the original print has eyebrows, but because we get the prequels where Obi-Wan sets Anakin on fire, burns his face up, they digitally erase his eyebrows.
Well, because those would never grow back.
Yeah, whatever. Right? I know, it's dumb. It's all dumb. And why does he have an egg head now? Oh, whatever. So anyway, in the 2004 DVD trilogy, though, they digitally altered Vader's face to appear more like Christensen. But it's most evident at the celebration of Endor, where the Force ghosts of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda appear. But instead of Shaw, who was present in the original film, the 2004 edition replaces Shaw's head with that of Christensen.
So is there any good in-universe reason why that makes more sense? Because I have I don't know the universe well enough reasons that makes no sense.
This is the best theory I read online. Is that apparently, again, these are like after the fact justifications, but Jedis can make themselves appear however they want.
Lame.
Even when they're dead.
Well, in particular when they're ghosts. Not when they're alive, when they're ghosts. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, well, that's what he looks like when he's younger. That's true. Why didn't we see him standing next to baby Yoda and a young Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't they want to appear as their younger, more virile images of themselves? Like, no, I'm going to make sure that my Force ghost is the decrepit old Muppet with a staff that can barely walk, because that was the character we knew. And but I understand that you want to show the actor for continuity, but it doesn't fit.
And my reason for not liking it is because that's not what we saw at the moment of his death. With Obi-Wan and Yoda, they look like they did at the time that they passed away. And I want the original. Like, I want to see Darth Vader as he looked when he passed away, because for me anyway, that's significant. It makes no sense for it to be a younger version of himself, because that's not who Luke knew. That's not.
No.
It just doesn't.
If Lucas did it today, I think he would probably deep fake Hayden Christensen and make him look older onto the Sebastian Shaw face that we see when the helmet comes on.
And I would have less problem with that.
I would too.
A bit, right? Because it doesn't change. It's changing the face, the contours of a face. It's not changing the story arc or the meaning behind anything.
Yeah.
And the final nyub. I was going to say the final rub, but I'll say the final nyub instead. At the very ending of the movie, in the original film, we were treated to this Ewok celebration that was, colloquially referred to as Yub Nub, which is what it sounds like the Ewoks are singing.
Yep.
Celebrating the demise of the Empire. The Death Star 2 was now, has been destroyed. The Ewoks are going to eat those stormtroopers. We know that, right? They definitely ate some of them already.
Barbecue.
They probably ate all the Wookiees. That's why we didn't have a planet of Wookiees.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's true. You're right.
Yeah.
So instead of having that song, now instead we get this other score, which is composed by John Williams as well, titled Victory Celebration. And instead of just seeing the Ewoks, banging on empty stormtrooper helmets, you're now treated to various, parties going on with some kind of new jazz music, probably playing like a Jabba on Coruscant, Bespin, and Tatooine.
Yeah.
And that's the original change in 97. And then in 2004, they added another shot to show Naboo, because now we've had the prequels.
Yes.
There's even a Gungan in there that has a line of dialogue. Again, like the Hayden Christensen Force Ghost, I could see tying in the whole 6 films. I get that.
Yeah.
Changing the song though, I don't get that. The original one was more, I don't know, something more, I don't know. I don't want to say visceral, but there was something that I felt more.
It was charming
and celebratory. And,
Yeah. And I'll try to eat my own dog food here, like Kat is known to do. In that, I actually think the story is better served by seeing that the galaxy in a wider scope is benefiting from this victory.
Sure.
I think that is a good story beat to establish that it's not just these people on this planet. It's not just is all the little people in furry suits that are happy. It's everyone in the galaxy is happy.
Yeah.
But I will still stick to the fact that that's not the story that I saw when I bought my ticket. And that's not like changing the contours of a face. That's adding entirely new shots that give you a broader scope. However better it might make the story is no longer accurate or true to the story that we saw.
And I think we can extrapolate, the triumph and the victory. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that we can be trusted as viewers to realize, there's probably more beings happier than the Ewoks, or just as happy as the Ewoks
I can see better now. Don't worry, I can see better. No, just say, trust me, everybody's happy.
It's interesting, though. There's a trust thing going on here.
Yeah. Let me spoon feed you the information that you should have already inferred.
Yes. Yeah. This is a scary monster. Han is a good guy. He wouldn't shoot at, he's not a cold-blooded killer. All that sort of thing. Anyway, all right. So wrapping up our story here, when Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney in 2012 for $4 billion, fans got a new hope that we'd see our original beloved films released. I was very much believed that, we got to get him out of there.
Yeah.
Old guard, and let's get these films out. Disney, if anything, likes to make money.
Oh, yeah.
But at Star Wars Celebration in 2017, Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy, stated that, quote, there was no intention of restoring the original theatrical cuts, end quote, honoring Lucas's intentions with the special edition versions. If that weren't enough, John, you made me think about this earlier. When the Star Wars films were ultimately made available on Disney Plus in 2019, eagle-eyed fans noticed some more changes.
That Disney did?
Yeah, when it was on Disney Plus now.
Son of a...
Greedo and Han now fire nearly simultaneously.
Oh, interesting.
There's very little time between the two shooting now.
Yeah, okay.
And my favorite change is that right before Greedo fires, he says, McClunky.
Oh, McClunky. I forgot about the McClunky.
Which is a word said in one of the prequels, and I believe it was translated based on subtitles to something like, I will end you.
McClunky.
Disney told The Verge it was a change made by Lucas prior to the Disney acquisition.
Oh. Okay.
If only, however, Lucasfilm had been guided by the testimony of a prescient filmmaker speaking to Congress in 1988 regarding the then popular colorization of black and white films. Remember that Ted Turner was colorizing all these films?
Yep.
At the time, this witness argued for laws that protected art, saying, this reminds me of all of our conversations so far in the show, quote, art in all forms belongs to the people. And it must be protected by public institutions, not multinational corporations that are driven by greed and self-interest. People who alter or destroy works of art and our cultural heritage for profit or as an exercise of power are barbarians.
Oh.
And it is the artist's unique vision made concrete in art that must be respected, that piece of our creative heritage that must be protected, end quote. You guys know who said that, right? George Lucas. George Lucas said that to Congress in 1988.
What?
He didn't mean it.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. Hypocrite.
I don't wish ill on anyone. I hope everyone lives to the ripe old age of 200 years old. But do you think that possibly people in power now, like your Kathleen Kennedys of the world, have likely made good faith promises to George Lucas to fulfill his wishes, to don't release these, that sort of thing, because we know they exist.
Yeah.
Do you think that as such time that some people pass on from this mortal coil, that perhaps then the promises will no longer be binding and these originals will finally get released? Do you think that's what it'll take? Will it ever happen?
I do. I 100% do.
Yeah. And to put a fine point on it, I'm saying when we ultimately lose George Lucas, right? And,
you're not calling for his death.
No, not at all.
No,
not at all. But that changes the ethical landscape because you're no longer keeping a promise to a person. So I think kind of breaking it, but if he's not around anymore, we'll see.
And researching this, I came across some interesting articles because I was Googling to whom does art belong? And I found this article where they talked about a couple of different times where people did not respect the wishes of an artist after they died. So one example I remember was Oscar Wilde was in jail, and he wrote, a letter to someone saying, "Upon my death, give my manuscripts to this lord and to his friend." And when he died, the friend did not do that.
Oh, okay.
Instead, he went and published them. There was another artist like Franz Kafka, who asked upon his death that all of his unpublished work be, burned in a fire.
Oh, wow.
The reason we have Franz Kafka's stories is because the person who he asked to do this didn't do it, and instead edited them and published them.
Wow. And he is arguably the most Kafka-esque author ever.
Man, this is Kafka-esque. All right, hey, that was the show. This show is Kafka-esque, especially because I didn't leave in what you just said about Kafka. I just now cut to this part.
Welcome to the non sequitur ending.
Maybe I'll have to leave it in now to make it make sense. All right, there you go. That was our show, Kathy.
That was our show, and our show is brought to you every week, thanks in part to our early adopters like Karen Flieger, Kathy Burke, and Rick Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
And thank you especially to our Secret of Our Success level Patreon supporters like Nick Guillory, Marcus Taylor, John Henderson, Brad Bowman, Tony Great, and Craig Coletta.
Yay.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. And drum roll, please. We have a new patron joining us.
do.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Say hello.
Hello.
To Craig Rustin.
Hey.
Do it, Craig.
Craig
Awesome.
Rustin?
Thank
Craig
you.
writes, love the show. Happy to pay for great content.
Aw.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you.
We truly appreciate it because folks like you and the others that Kat mentioned, honestly, seriously, this is not, John knows, this is not an exaggeration. You help us keep the lights on, so to speak.
Yes.
Our bills to be paid. But hey, if you can't chuck in a buck, there's plenty of other ways to support the show, including letting a friend know, sharing an episode on Facebook, subscribing to us on YouTube, or making a note, a comment on one of our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and TikTok, which I don't know much about it, but you don't have to go there. It's a weird place.
It is a weird place.
It's a Wild West.
Including these folks who made a comment with regard to our recent radio in the 80s show. Dale writes, the only radio I regularly listen to now is local community radio or occasionally Boom Radio. I don't know what that is. But I enjoy flicking through radio apps, but generally find the mainstream radio stations very poor indeed.
Oh, dear.
Oh, our new patron, Craig, also made a comment saying the only time I listen to FM radio, any radio really, nowadays is around Christmas when the stations play only Christmas music. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
We do that too in the car, I think.
Yep.
You can do that on streaming too. So I tend to not, because you can pick a type. You can go play me funny Christmas songs, play me traditional Christmas songs. So you can kind of laser focus it. But it's definitely a time that you would lead you to listen.
And Andrew says only internet radio, which I've checked those out. But oftentimes I think those seem to be more niche-y, right? Like maybe it's just the ones that are promoted to me because of our work. That's like 80s internet radio, for example.
Oh, sure.
It's it's pretty narrow banded, but a lot of local radio is too, all the hits from the, now they say 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and today. They say it all, don't they? So it's basically anything goes.
What's your thing though, John? All the hits that are fit? Is it?
All the hits that are fit to shit?
Yeah, that's right, yes.
That Florida station.
Said no mainstream radio.
Never,
DJ
ever.
That's great. All right. Hey, we'll see. We're going to say plenty of other things that no one else would ever say on mainstream radio when we talk to you next time on 1980s Now.
Until next time.
McClunky.
This podcast is part of the 80s Ruled Network. Visit the 80s Ruled on Facebook for more 1980s awesomeness.